was very late in the night, not quite morning yet. We were heading back to our camp. Both of us started feeling really uneasy. Felt like we weren't alone. We were heading toward that tree line where our tent was. That's when we both heard a very, very, very loud scream. I felt it in my stomach, my bones. It was incredibly loud. It was high pitched, but at the same time, you could also hear almost like a roar. We started running full speed toward that tree line to get to our camp, and we're hearing what sounds like trees kind of falling. We're just terrified. We're just trying to get to our campsite. Our campsite is completely destroyed. There's trees on top of it. The fence is down. The tent is crushed. There's trees falling all over it, and we had no idea what could have done that.
This is Bigfoot Crossroads. My name's Matt, and I'd like to welcome Phil to the show. Phil emailed me with a very interesting story, and I can't wait to get into it. Phil, how are you, man?
I'm good.
Your story starts off pretty interesting. Just kind of start us off at the beginning and walk us through it.
Yeah, it does. It starts off a long time ago. Back before I knew anything about Bigfoot. I think the only thing I had ever heard at that time about it was, Harry and the Hendersons, which, is just a funny little movie.
Right.
So, as a kid, I kind of grew up in a crappy situation and decided when I was a teenager that I was going to run away and escape kind of an abusive household. I went to New York City at first. Too many people, though. There was a lot going on. There was, I was on the missing persons list. It was a little scary out there. After about a year of that, I decided that I would go into the remote wilderness in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey with a buddy of mine. So that's what we did. I had some outdoor skills. I was obsessed with kind of survival and bushcraft as a child. I was always trying to build stuff, and I had this cool book. I think it was like the SAS Survival Guide.
Yeah.
I think the author was like John Wiseman. I think he was like this. He was the youngest soldier to join the SAS. Pretty cool guy. So I had that book, and I read it over a few times as a child. And when you're a teenager, after reading something like that, you think you're invincible out there.
Sure.
So me and my buddy got together with another friend who lived really close to this really remote area in the Pine Barrens, and he kind of hooked us up and took us to the store to get some essentials, and we headed out and picked up some knives, a tent, some other survival stuff, and decided to go out. I think it was probably about 3 or 4 miles deep into the Pine Barrens off this like kind of like little side road. And he lived probably another mile from there. So we were pretty remote, but we could walk to his house if we left early enough, and we would do that every so often and, get some food, get a shower.
Yeah. Now, you said you were a teenager. How old?
I was probably 14, 15 at the time.
Oh, wow.
Pretty young. Yeah. Yeah, very young. immature, you know.
I mean, but you don't think that at the time. At the time, you know everything, and like you said, you're invincible.
Of course, yeah, and wasn't afraid of anything. After a year living on the streets in New York City, you kind of
Yeah,
you kind of don't fear much.
I'd imagine.
But yeah, we hiked into the woods. We found this really cool area that was I don't know if you know about the Pine Barrens, but it's kind of sandy in some parts of the Pine Barrens. They have a lot of sand, and there was this one part that was like very sandy, had like this crazy white sand, and these I guess these BMX dudes like kind of dug out some ramps and stuff and ditches, and dudes would take their dirt bikes out there sometimes. It was pretty cool. It was kind of like a little open area in the middle of the woods. Kind of could see everything. You could see for a long distance, and where we were had a little height to it, so you could kind of see down, and really cool. So we saw that, and we were like, oh, maybe we should get somewhere close to here. So then we found this little tree line, walked into it a bit, and it went down a bit and kind of flattened out, and we found this really cool little camp area that was really hidden, very thick all around it. We were trying to avoid detection, which was our number one goal at that time. We did not want to end up in protective services or anything like that. We had a healthy fear of that. So yeah, so we found this little area. We set up the tent, dug out a little kind of fire pit. From that book, I learned to, it teaches you how to avoid detection. So we did kind of like this little, I guess you would call it a Dakota fire pit, where it feeds air from one side into a hole,
right?
And the fire kind of stays a little below the ground, so that you're not, you don't have like a giant bonfire in the middle of the woods. So we had one of those. We just, after everything was set up, we would just walk around and forage and just try to learn our surroundings a bit more. But ever since the first night, there was weird sounds that we weren't used to, and definitely pretty creepy. We would hear, twigs breaking and things walking around our camp at night, and we did not know what it was. We just kind of figured it was animals. So I decided that we should build a little perimeter fence. And we did that. We took a bunch of saplings, cut them down, tied them together with some paracord and duct tape and whatever we could, stuck them into the ground, and built this pretty intricate perimeter fence around our whole camp, which also helped us remain a little more undetected. It was pretty camouflaged in there. You could barely see it if you were just walking around back there. So that made us feel a little more safe. But every night we'd hear walking all around our campsite, and it, to me, sounded like bipedal walking. So we thought maybe there could be some kind of, recluse type dude out there, maybe also living out there with us.
Did you see wildlife out there? Did you see deer and stuff?
Oh, yeah. There was loads of deer. Yeah, loads and loads of deer. So many, an insane amount of deer all the time. There was all kinds of different birds all the time, raccoons all the time, possums, just like the small kind of critters.
Yeah.
We didn't run into anything crazy. But yeah, like I said, mostly deer. But these did not sound like deer. When the deer would come through, you could tell. You could hear that there was four legs coming down, and the way they moved. This was a little different. It got to the point where we were literally thinking, like, is this place haunted or something?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it was very close to our perimeter wall. We would hear these footsteps just walking in circles all around all night. And then we started hearing like little noises here and there. It just kind of progressed as we were there. We would hear whistles that did not sound like birds, because you could tell like there was like all these different kind of birds out there. It was, have you ever heard of a whippoorwill?
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be like the night sounds would be lots of those things. I'm not even going to try to mimic that sound. But yeah, it's a bird called a whippoorwill, and their sound actually sounds like whippoorwill.
Yeah.
You know, doo-doo-doo. You know, you would hear that all night long. And then all of a sudden when those footsteps came, it would just all the birds would stop. All the little critters would stop. It would get super quiet. And, yeah, that's when we would start hearing those footsteps. Then the whistle started. We would hear like a whistle, then another whistle, you know, maybe 50 yards away.
How would you describe the whistle?
Very loud. Kind of like, you know, like when you're a kid at like a baseball game or something, and you see one of those dudes like stick his two fingers in his mouth and just go hard and just belt out a whistle, you know, one of those kind of, just a very loud, long whistle.
Was it like single tone?
There would usually be 1 to 3, I noticed. It was always either 1 or 3.
Okay.
But very long and drawn out. Yeah, we did not know what to think about that. Literally, we thought it was haunted or something. You know, we were young. We had never lived in the woods like that. So, yeah, it was terrifying. But we kind of just, you know, paid it no attention really. After a while, we just kind of got used to it.
Is this something, was it happening every single night?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. At least something, you know.
Yeah.
If it wasn't the whistles, it was just the footsteps, or, you know, and just started progressing. Like we started getting things thrown into the campsite, pine cones, little stones and acorns and stuff.
Like over the fence?
Yes. Yep. Right onto the tent.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know, we'd look around. Outside, there was no pine cones hanging over our tent. The trees around our tent did not have cones on them, so that was pretty strange. Again, never Bigfoot never came into our thoughts. We were just kind of weirded out by like, where are these coming from? This is strange. There was one day we were out there and we were kind of just walking around foraging and stuff. I had this book of plants and stuff. And I was trying to identify some plants, and there was this kid on a dirt bike that was driving. I guess he had come from that sand pit area, and he saw us. When we saw him, we made eye contact, and I'm like, oh great, we're spotted. But the kid, like, you know, he came over to us and asked us what we were doing, and we kind of told him. He was a little younger than us. He seemed pretty cool though. He's like, yeah, I won't tell on you guys. And then he told us, don't you know the mafia used to dump bodies back here? And we're like, well, okay, that's weird. And then we start thinking, okay, the mafia used to dump bodies back here. Is this what we're hearing at night? Are we hearing, you know, some sort of paranormal stuff? So yeah, you know, we had that in our heads. That added a level of, you know, terror to when the night came. But yeah, you know, it kept going on and on and on. And there was one night we went out with our buddy. We hung out with him for a little bit. it was really late. It was probably like, had to have been like 11:30, 12 maybe. I don't know. It was so long ago. I can't tell you what time it was. It was very late in the night, not quite morning yet. He dropped us off at the tree line, and we were heading back to our camp. And both of us started feeling really uneasy, very nauseous, and kind of just not right. Like, kind of like felt like we weren't alone. And we had been talking about it. We were like, this doesn't feel right. But we were just like, whatever, let's just get to our camp. So we're walking, we get to that sand pit area. The moon is out. The sand is almost kind of illuminating off the moon is kind of illuminating the sand. So you could see pretty well. And we were heading toward that tree line where our tent was. And that's when we both heard a very, very, very loud scream, like a woman being murdered, kind of like how everyone describes it, you know?
Yeah.
Just rattles right through your body. I felt it in my stomach, my bones. It was incredibly loud and high pitched. But there seemed to be like another tone with it was high pitched, but at the same time you could also hear almost like a roar at the exact same time. That was just deep and guttural. So we both heard that and stopped in our tracks. I feel like the only thing I can compare the feeling to was when I was at a Motorhead show and I was standing 10 feet from Lemmy's bass amp and he came out and started playing that song Overkill.
Yeah.
And that bass from that is like what I felt in that scream. That just completely just feel it through from your head to your toes, inside and out, you know? We had no idea what that was. We started running full speed toward that tree line to get to our camp. So we get to the tree line and we're going through the really, really thick brush to get to our camp. And we're hearing what sounds like trees kind of falling. I'm like, I stopped and I'm like, doesn't that sound like trees falling? Meanwhile, the scream happened a couple more times before we got to our camp. So at this point, we are like, we don't know what we're dealing with. We're just terrified. We're just trying to get to our campsite. We had all kinds of knives and stuff there. We were trying to get to them. And then I get a look at where our campsite is, and I stop my buddy, and I'm like, look. And our campsite is completely destroyed. There's trees on top of it. The fence is down. The tent is crushed. There's trees falling all over it. We couldn't even get to it. And we had no idea what could have done that. So we just turned around and we just started booking it. Those screams got a lot louder, a lot closer. We started seeing, like, from the tree line, these trees shaking back and forth. And I'm like, what is shaking those trees? We jumped in this kind of dugout hole that was kind of like a bowl that they would use for dirt biking. And we were just literally huddled in there trying to hide from whatever this was. And we were just ducked down in the sand pit, literally getting screamed at. Every time we'd peek out, we'd see like there was at one point there was a tree that was out. We saw this almost like a root ball getting smashed between these two trees and just dirt flying everywhere. It was just loud thumping. It was horrifying. We had no idea what could have been doing that. At that point, I asked my buddy if he thinks like someone slipped acid into our drink or something, because it was so out of this world. It was, you can't describe it, especially when you have no concept of what, these creatures are or do. So we had no idea. Like, I had no other explanation. I'm like, this is either paranormal or both of us are having the same exact acid trip because we got slipped acid. Like, that's the only thing I could think of at the time. But we were only with a good friend of ours, so I mean, it's damn near impossible that was it. But we were just trying to come up with something that it could be.
Yeah.
So my buddy starts hearing stuff in his own head. I didn't have this. He started really freaking out that something was talking to him in his head, and that's when I was like, yeah, this has to be some sort of LSD trip or something. You're hearing things in your head, We peeked out. Trees were still shaking. We were still hearing things walking around, snapping branches. I had noticed that there was this kind of dead tree down at the bottom of these sand pits. And I noticed that it looked like there was something in it. And I pointed it out to my buddy. And we're just staring at this thing. It's just like this black silhouette. It looks like two arms holding a branch above it, hanging up, and kind of squatted down on this really thick branch, like a low branch that was probably about 5 feet up off the ground. And it just looked like someone was holding a branch above its head and squatting down. I was like, what is that? It was all black silhouette. And I'm like, maybe it's just a tree. And my buddy's like, it looks like someone like hanging in that tree. And I'm like, yeah, it totally does. I dropped down onto the sand and got on all fours, like looked like a spider. That's when I'm like, all right, that's something. I don't know what that is. Trying to make any sense of this was just like impossible at the time.
Yeah, I would say so.
Shaking with fear. And we ducked down back in that pit. And I'm telling you, my buddy was grabbing onto my arm so hard. I had bruises all over my arm. I mean, we were freaking scared. So we're in this pit, and this thing starts. That was what was screaming, because we heard the scream again from that area, and then we started hearing a laugh that almost sounded like kind of like a spotted hyena.
Yeah,
but like more ape-like. I didn't even think ape at the time. I just was like, okay, this is the worst trip ever. I don't know what that is. It didn't sound human. It sounded almost like, it's so weird how it sounded. Almost like one of those like voice changing boxes, that people use on interviews, like, former CIA agents or something would, whistleblowers use those like weird kind of voice changers.
Yeah.
Sounded like it was almost coming from one of those. Very inhuman, very nothing we've heard, nothing we've ever known to exist, So that's what we heard laughing around us. And this thing was running on all fours at really high speeds all around the sand pit. I'm sure the thing was watching us peeking out of that pit, and it would run by and kick loads of sand on us. We were just getting covered, and we had sand in our eyes. It was, every time it went by, you could hear the thuds of its hands and feet on the ground, just getting closer and closer. And then all of a sudden, it would just be like, I can't even tell you how much sand just kicking all over us. And it was pretty creepy. We stayed in that pit literally until the sun came up, having all this happen. It was hours. We were stuck in there. We couldn't move. We both, it's embarrassing to say, but at the time, we both pissed our pants in that pit. We were sitting in that pit covered in sand, terrified, covered in pee. Like we were shaking. It just felt like so out of this world. When that sun came up, we saw the sun started like coming over the horizon. It started getting a little lighter. I peeked out. I didn't see anything. We can still hear things moving through the tree line. I didn't see that thing running around anymore. I was like, dude, let's run for it. And we ran so fast. We just kept going. When we were running, we ran to the road. And if you cross the road, there's another set of trees on the other side. And that eventually leads to some railroad tracks. We're like, maybe we should just hit the railroad tracks and just start heading south. And my buddy's like, all right. So we go running across the street into the next tree line. It was so bizarre. As we're running, we get to the tree line. We're running through the trees, and I hear this car coming, and the car skids to a stop and literally crashes off the road into the trees.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what that was. I don't know what I was like, dude, let's just keep going. I'm not turning around. I'm not going back to see what that was. That car saw something. I don't know what that car saw, but whatever that thing is, it's still out here, and let's just go. We ran to those railroad tracks, and when we hit those tracks, we did must have been about 18 miles on those tracks that day. We went across the railroad bridge. We got into the town where we're from. It was crazy. We're on the railroad tracks. We're going, and there's this road crossing coming up, and we're kind of just trying to stay hidden because we're both still on the missing persons list. If any cop saw us, they probably would have stopped us. We looked crazy. I mean, I didn't mention we're street punks too. So we've got mohawks, we've got leather jackets with spikes. We kind of stick out like sore thumbs. Plus, we both peed ourselves, and we were sitting covered in sand all night. We looked like a horrible mess. We're crossing the street, and just so happens an old friend was driving to go visit her mom, and she sees us. She hadn't seen us in almost 2 years at this point. There was rumors going around that we were dead. There was rumors that we ran away to California. So many different rumors. So she sees us, and she's like, what the hell happened to you guys? She said we looked like we saw ghosts. We were completely just white, just horrified, bug-eyed, like we had been up all night, just terrified, smelled awful, She gets us in her car. She's like, you guys can live with me. We're like, what? She literally took us in. After that day, we never went back to that campsite. I don't think after that day, went back into the woods, especially at night. And I had no idea. We still had no idea what happened. We still at the time were like, okay, when we talked about it, it was like, that must have been LSD or something, or some sort of hallucinogenic. And then we just couldn't figure out where that could have came from. But we had no other I had no knowledge of any of this. So I had, for years, I mean, I went so long thinking that this could have just been some weird trip, until about, I think it was about 2011. Is that when Finding Bigfoot came out? About 2011, 2010, something like that?
Yeah, right around then.
Yeah. So it's funny. I went from, not knowing anything. Then I see this commercial on TV. I'm sitting here with my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. We had moved to California. We're sitting there watching TV one night. I'm in my 20s. And this commercial comes on for Finding Bigfoot. And, I see this thing come on, and I think it was Matt Moneymaker that's like, I think there's a squatch in these woods. And me and my wife started hysterically laughing, I'm making fun of it,
Yeah.
At the time, I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, are these people for real? I'm like, is this like a real thing? And so, I would make fun of it and, do that impression sometimes, like just joking around, and then I just kept seeing these commercials for the show, and I'm like, you know what? I should watch it. This just looks too good. This looks kind of funny. I gotta watch this. And then I'm watching that show, and things are just starting to click about my experience. And I'm like, all right, this is weird. And I start doing my own research. And I'm looking up stuff on YouTube, and then I start watching more videos, and people are talking about these things walking around their campsite at night and circling and throwing pine cones. And that's when I started shaking. Like, I'm shaking right now, just recounting this. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I wonder if that's what I was dealing with out there. And, I started listening to the earlier podcasts that were coming out and hearing encounters and watching everything and just trying to soak up as much knowledge as possible. I started buying books and, doing all kinds of research and kind of pinpointed it to that. So I did kind of a full circle there. I went from not knowing to making fun of to pretty much firmly believing that what happened to us that day was these creatures that we kind of imposed on. We came into their area where they live. We were making noise. We had, we were blasting punk rock from battery operated boom boxes and, knocking trees down, building stuff, we were just in their area.
How long were you there at that time, like in that camp?
There was a total of almost 2 years, I would say.
Oh, wow.
Year and a half.
Yeah. Not only did you go into their territory, but then you didn't leave. You just stayed there.
Yeah, we set up shop. We stayed. And that's why it progressively kind of got worse and worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I slowly kind of made this realization that this is what I was dealing with, and that's what that creature was. And then what really sealed the deal was when I heard it was probably like a Sasquatch Chronicles episode where a hunter said that he saw this thing get on all fours and look like a spider. And when he said that, I almost fell over. That's exactly what it looked like. Looked like a spider. The way its anatomy is, it's not like if me and you got on our hands and knees or on the ground. It's a little different. It was just an inhuman way of moving. It was very fast, rapid. I'm talking something that can do a 360 on all fours and just stay really low to the ground within a second and just completely run the opposite way and just disappear. I mean, this thing had very, very very inhuman kind of movements. That was my first encounter that kind of gave me the realization that these things are real and these things are out there. At the same time, I thought, as mad as we made these things that were living out there, they never physically harmed us. They terrified us. They never came into that, they never hurt us. They never grabbed us. They could have knocked a tree over onto us if they wanted to.
Right.
While we were sleeping in the tent. They never did that. And that kind of got me over my fear of being alone in the woods again. Because, from that time up until, 2012-ish, I did not enjoy being in the woods at all. I did not like it. I had PTSD from it. It was just, it was something I did not do. I did not like it. I had a friend who lived out in the woods, a few years later, and I stayed at his house a couple times back in the day, and I wouldn't even go out to smoke a cigarette at nighttime out there. I had a healthy fear of it.
Yeah. Did you ever talk to that friend that experienced it with you?
I did. These days he's really, I don't know, he's not really in the healthiest state of mind, I would say.
Yeah.
I think he's still got, issues with either addiction or alcoholism. And I did contact him about it. I never brought up Bigfoot because I didn't,
how do you even bring that up?
Yeah. After almost 20 years of not talking, I'm like, hey,
remember that most terrifying night of our lives? I think I've got it figured out. It's Bigfoot.
Yes. Yeah. So I did bring it up. I did kind of, I said, hey, remember that, just like you said, remember that terrifying night we had in the woods? And he's like, and it sounded like I brought some stuff up he did not want to talk about. Yeah, I do. He's like, that was horrible. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, we always thought, we were tripping, right? And like, we must have gotten slipped something, right? Isn't that like kind of like the story we came up with about that? And he's like, yeah. The only person we saw that day was our other friend. And he was kind of like a goody boy. Like he wasn't the one to, have any kind of connections for any acid or anything. I'm like, you realize like he's the only person we saw. And we both had the exact same experience, heard the same things, saw the same thing. Isn't that a little strange? He's just like, yeah, I never thought of that. Like, he's like, yeah, it's damn near impossible that we would ever be slipped anything. I'm like, yeah. And I kind of left it at that for him to ponder on. He's like, that's freaking weird, man. Ever since I brought that up to him, though, he will not talk about it. I've tried to text him about it. I've tried to kind of slowly, feel him out for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does not want to talk about it. He kind of, yeah. I think that kind of affected him a little too much too.
But that's what we do as humans. I mean, if a hunter experiences something out in the woods that they don't really have an explanation for, they typically just write it off as like, oh, well, it must have been a bear or maybe, a hermit living out there or something like that. And in your situation, at that age and everything and your life experiences that you were going through and had gone through up to that point, it kind of makes sense to me that the first place you would kind of go is like, man, we must be tripping. Like somebody must have slipped us something, like nothing else is going to be on your radar. And you're trying to make sense of that experience because not having knowledge of what was going on is even more terrifying.
Exactly. Yep. But yeah, that whole thing and just realizing that these things are out there just sparked this, like, I have been doing an insane amount of research. I'm also an artist. I started drawing some of those experiences in my own kind of unique style. And I started like an Instagram page called Sasquatch Reanimated. Kind of just started posting art at first, and it kind of, people started really liking it, and it kind of blew up a bit. And then I got the idea to let people know, like, if you have an encounter, give me a call, shoot me a DM, and I'll illustrate your encounter for you for free. I thought that was pretty fun, so I've been doing that for the past few years. And then I started having some experiences of my own. I started going out in the woods a lot more. I started, you know, I didn't really have a fear of the woods like I used to. Once I came to the realization that these things did not hurt us. These things, we pissed them off so much, and they did not ever touch us or throw any. We never got hit by a rock. I mean, they could have done so much damage to us. So I kind of like got over that fear, and started going out into the woods again, and foraging again. And I'm big into mycology, so we have a friend that lives up in the Redwoods. We drive up there twice a year now. She lives in the middle of the Redwoods. She has a cabin that was built in the late 1800s. It's got like a really cool wood burning stove. It's very old, but very cool. It's got a wraparound porch. The beams of the porch literally go down into this really cool rapids, like a pretty fast moving creek. I mean, she is out there. So we go visit her, and then all these other experiences start happening. Now I'm fully aware. I also want to say I got my instructor's certificate in military Krav Maga around that time we started going out there. One thing we teach is self-awareness. I mean, we're taught to just keep our heads on a swivel at all times. I have a new self-awareness about me. I have my head, I'm looking at everything. I'm looking up, I'm looking down, I'm looking between trees, I'm looking at all the dark spots, the shadows. So we're up there, we're doing some hikes. The first time we went up to the Redwoods, it was the rainy season. So there was turkey tail mushrooms everywhere. So I'm out there just foraging away on these turkey tails. My family went back to the cabin. We have a young son. At that time, he was probably 3. He couldn't he couldn't do any big hikes at that time. So I stayed out there. I ended up doing an overnight, collecting mushrooms. And then that's when I started having another encounter experience. I heard vocalizations down by the water, down by the creek at night. And most of the sound was just the creek. You could just hear the water. It was very loud. But I started hearing these like rumbles and kind of chatter, like 2 things talking to each other down by the water. So when the sun came up in the morning, I went over to investigate, and that's when I found a very large set of tracks, about, let's say, around 19 inches long, 5.5 inches wide at the top of the arch. And it kind of, one was pressed really, really far down into the side of the creek bed over there. And then the others kind of disappeared into this tall grass. I mean, it was pressed so far down that it started filling up with water from the wetness of the substrate.
Wow.
You see those survival shows where, like, you find like some fresh water and you dig like a hole next to it and it starts filling up with water.
Yeah.
Just like that. I mean, this thing was probably 4.5 inches deep, and yeah, it was just filled with water, perfectly shaped like a human kind of foot, except wider. So that's around the time where I'm like, okay, well, I think these things are here. So I just kept following that trackway, and that's where I noticed another one that was smaller. It was probably half the size of that one, but also a very distinct barefoot track in the middle of the redwoods and in the rainy season. No one's walking around there with bare feet during that time. So yeah, I started noticing that, started photographing those. I started just after I saw those tracks, I started just taking pictures of the forest around me. Just very candid shots. I would have my cell phone I would be walking with like cross arms with my phone under my arm and kind of just poke it out a little and just take like a shot and then hide it again. I was trying to be as, candid as possible. When I got back to that cabin, I started going through my photos and yeah, I started finding what looked like to me Sasquatch looking at me, hiding, from behind trees and stuff. I started seeing them in my photos. And that's when I started posting them on my page and sharing them with people and trying to get feedback from other researchers. And I know I sent a bunch to, at one point I sent a bunch to Ronnie LeBlanc. He found a few of them pretty intriguing. Other researchers I've shared them with have also found some of those photos pretty cool. We started going there, like I said, twice a year, and each time we had, some sort of experience. I would go pretty deep out there. Or I would usually do about probably like 14, 15 mile hikes during the day, and just kind of go like about 6, 7, 8 miles deep and kind of turn around. I like to go off trail too, so I don't like to really stick to any major trails. But even the area we were in, it's not very it's not like a hot spot. It's not like some like Yosemite or Sequoias where there's like 1,000 people on the trails. You don't run into anyone out there. You might run into like a trail runner or two here and there, but that's about it. So it's pretty secluded. And then I started finding tree structures, big X's everywhere, very large X's, like 30-foot tall trees, 6 inches around, 7 inches, 8 inches around, stuffed into the ground, like, very bizarre kind of structures that I started finding everywhere. And anytime I was in those areas and I started seeing that, I started feeling that feeling that everyone talks about where you're kind of being watched. And there was certain areas that I was like heading in a certain direction, and all of a sudden I just felt the urge, like I needed to just stop and just not go that way.
Yeah, the wall.
And it was just so random. My body would not let me go any further. And I don't know why. I can't explain it. But I would freeze. I would just be stuck. And it's like, yeah, don't keep going. Just stay right where you are. Turn around. Like, head the other way. Don't go that way. But I have no idea. I cannot explain why.
Yeah, that's something I've talked to a lot of people about over the years, and something that was brought up early on whenever I was going out researching. We called it the wall.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced it. I've seen it happen to other people. Like you're saying, it's so hard to explain because it's not just a sense of like, got the chili bumps. It's kind of spook. No, it's a dead stop. It's an absolute, I cannot take another step further.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was feeling like up there. And it was strange. So anytime I felt that feeling, I would get my phone out and just start doing 360 pictures all around me, hundreds of them. I mean, hundreds of pictures. I would just start snapping away. And then I would, during my free time, be just going through them, zooming in, taking screenshots of certain things, zooming in more, looking at every little shadow and crack and crevice, and, just scanning every single picture. And, once in a while, you just see an eyeball. And then you follow that eyeball down, you see a nose and a cheek and maybe like a part of a mouth hanging out from the side of a tree. And you see fur or hair, And I started, getting more, I started seeing this more and more in my pictures. And it was pretty cool. I mean, I was just blown away by it. I was like, I can't believe how close these things are. And I had no idea. You don't see them when you're there. It's like they could be 10 feet from you, these giant creatures, and you have zero visuals until you start going through your photos and you're like, okay, wow. So yeah, I knew they were there, and fast forward, we kept going. I kept doing, anytime I was up there, I would be out in the woods almost the whole time. I got my wife and my son. We brought the dog at one point. I found this really cool area. It was right off a main road. There was no trail. There was no parking or anything. We kind of just parked on the side of the road. I saw this cutout in the trees, and when you drive by it and you look in, there's just beautiful. I mean, it just looks beautiful, ferns and redwoods, and it just looks magical almost. So I was like, I need to get in there. I want to go check that area out. It was probably about, I would say, 5 miles from my friend's cabin. So we decided to go there one day. It's a very steep incline going up. But we were all feeling up for it. It was early. So the whole family, we went in, we're hanging out at the bottom. My son's, very young at the time, 3, 4 years old. So, he's having a blast in the woods. The dogs are running around like crazy. And I'm like, all right, well, let's get up to the top of this ridge and see what's going on up there. So we did. We started going up. And as we're going up, I start hearing very loud thumps on a tree, I believe. These trees, the bark on these trees is super thick, and it's kind of soft. It's not like, like a hard bark from like a pine tree or something, a normal like pine tree. It's got like softness to it. If you punch it with your fist, it's kind of got some cushioning to it. So when you thump it, if you take your hand, an open hand, and cup it and just thump it, kind of has this distinct sound. It's very muffled and just, that's what I was hearing, but very loud. Like it sounded like a big hand just thumping away on a redwood. And we were the only ones out there. I mean, it was in the middle of nowhere. And then my wife starts getting startled. At this point, she's making fun of me for getting into the whole Bigfoot thing. And I will also add this: she has no idea about my first encounter. I have not told her to this day.
Oh wow!
And I probably won't. She's also an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker. She kind of, she's in that mental health field. I have a feeling if I ever told her about this story, she'd have me,
Yeah, she'd be analyzing you.
Oh, I would be analyzed. I would be on some heavy medications. So, yeah, I kind of just keep that one to myself. But yeah, either way, she makes fun of me all the time for the whole, watching all this, Bigfoot stuff and drawing Bigfoot all the time, and it's just funny. I mean, she doesn't really care. She just kind of busts my chops about it.
Yeah.
But we're going up this to the top of this ridge, and we hear that, and she says, "What is that?" And I go, "I'm not going to say it. I think I know what it is, but I'm not going to say it." And she just goes, "Bigfoot." I'm like, yeah, it could be. I don't know. Might not be. Might be just someone, hitting a tree in the middle of the forest.
Could be.
Yeah, it could be. We keep going, and we hear it again in another direction, almost like it's being answered. And she goes, "This sounds just like those videos you show me, where these things are, where those Bigfoots are tree knocking or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, it sure does, doesn't it? It's very loud." She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "This is weird." And we start going up. We get all the way up to the top, and there's a little clearing. There's some big redwood tree fall. And my son was hungry, so he stopped and sat on the redwood. He was climbing around. He had a little snack, like a Cliff Bar or something. We were just chilling, and the dog was starting to act up a little. She started to, she was just running around like crazy the whole time, like having a blast. And all of a sudden, she's like between my legs, just like staring up at me with these like big eyes, like, I'm like, "What's wrong with you?" And we're sitting there, and right at the next, like, we're on this top clearing. I would say there's more trees, really thick, probably about, I would say 50 to 75 yards away. Like it started getting like a lot thicker, and we started hearing something coming, walking heavily in that thick brush. And my wife just looks at me. She's like, "What is that?" And I kind of got up. My dog is still between my legs, just like staring up at me. Like she wasn't even going toward it. I mean, usually when she hears something in the woods, she's an Aussie Shepherd, Border Collie mix. She's a herding dog. If she sees anything running through the woods, she just goes after it. She doesn't want to hurt it. She just wants to go check it out, but she books it. I mean, and they're fast dogs. These dogs can run almost 30 miles an hour. She was just between my legs and just staring up at me, looking really scared. And I'm like, "All right, well, let's just head back down. Let's just head back down the other way." And my wife's like, yeah, let's just get out of here. So we all get up. We start, grabbing my son and, putting the leash on the dog. And we're about to head down the way we came, pretty much. And me and my wife, all of us, and my son, we all heard this perfect whoop. Loud, thick, loud, deep, guttural whoop, followed by what sounded like a gorilla grunting. It was just like a woo, and then like that, like one to three. I don't know what it was. A couple, maybe two grunts after, and we're like, I saw my wife's face. She looked at me, and she's like, "What was that?" And I said it again. I'm like, if I tell you, you'll probably make fun of me, but there's only one thing that makes that noise out here, and it's not a bear, and it's not a coyote. It's not a mountain lion. And she's like, all right, whatever, let's just go. So we're heading down kind of with a quick pace. And I see her eyes. I think she's like starting to come to the realization that maybe all the stuff I tell her and show her might not be so far-fetched after all. And we're walking down this very steep. I mean, we're kind of sliding on our butts part of the way on the way down. It was really steep. And we're walking, and then we just start hearing this kind of moaning, really weird moaning sound. It's like, she's like, what is that? And I'm just like, I don't know. I have no idea. It's very creepy. Just keep walking slowly. Don't run. Just keep walking. We'll just kind of exit slowly and, everyone stay together and, keep your head on a swivel. So we're just walking, and then all of a sudden this little piece of quartz, like, I don't know, milky quartz, I think it was, probably about the size of a marble. Not shaped like a marble, it's, very raw. Just comes flying and just hits this redwood tree, like right by my head, and thumps onto the ground. And I just look down, I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, how did this, like, well, something just threw this at us. So let's just keep going. Let's just keep getting out of here. All right. Whatever this is does not want us here. I picked the thing up. I kept that little piece of quartz, put it in my pocket. We just kept walking. And then we all kind of stopped and heard, it sounded like a baby crying. And then that sound got very swiftly muted, almost like something like covered the mouth of a baby.
Oh, wow.
Like if a baby just starts wailing, and then all of a sudden it's like, just complete silence after that.
And this is all middle of the day, broad daylight.
Yeah, afternoon. Probably like, I would say, at this point, it was probably maybe 3:00 in the afternoon.
Jeez.
Yeah. I'm looking around for people. I'm like, is there someone else out here? There's no other person in that whole area. There was not one person. I mean, it's a pretty isolated, hidden area. I don't think many people go back there. I mean, I'm constantly looking for footprints and doing some mild tracking and stuff. I didn't usually see hiking boot tracks everywhere. There was no tracks anywhere back there.
Trash, something.
Nothing. There was no sign of any people back there at all. But yeah, the baby noise was very creepy, being covered by that hand. And then we finally got to the bottom area, and that's around the area where I heard, like, where that baby sound came from. So I'm looking around, I'm just trying to like investigate a bit, and just, I'm snapping hundreds of pictures, of course. And we're down at the bottom, and you could see like this kind of cutout where like that leads to our car eventually. So we kind of felt a little safer down there. So my son wanted to play in the woods a bit. He was like, grabbing big sticks and smacking them against trees. I found some shelf mushrooms that were really cool. I was, like I said, into mycology. I'm still into mycology, so I'm like taking pictures of mushrooms and stuff. I was actually drumming on these shelf mushrooms, like Jim Carrey did in Pet Detective 2.
Yeah.
I'm like playing like Wipeout on these like shelf mushrooms, and my son's smacking sticks against trees and stuff, and not for a reason. He was just having fun.
Right.
And then we're making all this noise down there, and in the distance, I hear it sounded like a loud scream, but like very far away. That kind of not scream, more like like a siren, but very far away. It sounded like almost like that Ohio howl kind of sound to it. which was pretty cool. I was like, wow, and we all heard it. That's when my wife is like, you know what? I don't think we're going to be taking our son here hiking anymore. This is a little too much for me. For a brief second, I think she believed in Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Either way, we taking videos of my son. This is where it got really creepy. Taking a video, and then my son's in the video. I'm like, his name, I don't want to say his name, but I'm like, hey, buddy, what are you doing? And he's got my wife's phone, and he's like about to have a little temper tantrum because he can't get the camera to switch to selfie mode. And it's super cute. I mean, he's 4 years old, and he's like, starts freaking out about this phone. And I'm just videotaping him, and I'm like, all right, well, this isn't a good video. You're starting to act up. And I just turn the video off. And then, we calm him down. We leave. We get back to the cabin, whatever. I'm going through my pictures and this and that. And that's when I started finding some very odd findings in my pictures, especially when he started freaking out about the phone. There was these two trees in the background that kind of went down into a V. It was like the opening came down into a V between these two trees, the way they were angled. And right in the bottom of that V, while he's freaking out, you can see this head moving behind, trying to get a good look at him. And it's literally, you could see it like moving to try to get just to really lock onto him. And it's really creepy. I'm like looking at this thing like, what is that? So I started zooming in and taking, screenshot after screenshot, trying to capture like just some image of what this thing could be. And yeah, it had eyes. It looked to me like it was a Sasquatch. Nose, eyes, you could see part of its upper teeth coming out, almost like it had its head tilted back, but was like trying to look forward at the same time, trying to like just really remain hidden. I'm going through my pictures, and right where I heard that baby cry, I have a picture that can only be described as an infant's face, with gray skin. You could see the eyes, the nose. It's a face in a bush. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm zooming around, and I'm looking through this foliage, and you can see also it's being held by a mother. Something else is there, and it is not in full. It's very faded looking. It almost looks like it's not translucent. I don't know, just foggy. But you could make out the eye, the cheekbone. You can make out the part of the nose. You can make out the shape of the head. You could even see some hair. And it was looking right at my son as well. The eyes were, if you look at the picture, the eyes are pointed. You could see the pupil pointed right at my son, which I started noticing a lot more after I saw that. I started looking at all the pictures of my son that I took in the Redwoods back there. And there were a few pictures where you can see some creatures and the eyes would be directed right at him, like they were very interested in him. And it seemed like anytime I took him out in that area, these things would come around us like a lot closer than usual.
Now, how far away are they?
I mean, this thing had to have been less than 20 feet away, maybe 20 to 25 feet away in that area. It's hard to judge through the picture, but it's close. It's very close. Yeah, I just started noticing that up there. when I'm out there, when I'm alone, I don't feel like that kind of that fear. But when I'm with my son out there and these things are looking at him, it's kind of gives me a little anxiety, you know.
Well, sure.
I don't know what their interest is with them. You hear some stories where, you know, I mean, there's a full spectrum of stories. You hear stories where they help people. You hear stories where they take people. It's just hard to judge something that is so unknown. So yeah, I kind of feel a little nervous about taking them out there, at least really deep out there anymore. Like if we go now, I kind of stick to like more well-traveled trails when I'm with him, and you know, I am on high alert the whole time. I do not let him run ahead. I'm very strict when it comes to being out there now. My wife actually makes fun of me. She's like, "Wow, you're so strict. Just let him." And I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to let him run ahead of us. Like, if he's 50 feet ahead of us, that's enough time for anything to grab him. I mean, he weighs 40 pounds soaking wet. I mean, you know, it's not that hard to carry a 40-pound kid off into the woods. So, yeah, I'm very, very strict when it comes to, you know, being out there with him anymore.
So what do you think's going on with these things? Like you talk about that one picture of the infant and the, I guess, mother not being fully solid. What do you think's going on?
Well, I've gone through like the whole roller coaster of ideas about this, and just I like to read as much as I can about this in particular. I think that these things have developed some really unique abilities, just like a lot of other animals on this planet have. Even as simple as a polar bear. Like a polar bear, its hair is completely see-through. It's clear. It's not white. It's completely see-through. It has black skin. And the way the hair itself is shaped between that and the black skin and its surroundings, it picks up its surroundings. That's an adapt, and that's how it adapts. That's how it hides from baby seals. It can sneak up on anything. It could remain almost completely unseen on the ice and in the snow. I think maybe these things might have, you know, adapted something similar. You know, you hear all this, you know, lack of a medulla talk all the time. You know, Meldrum talks about it all the time, how all the hair samples he gets they lack a medulla, which is the central core of a hair follicle. You know, if that's the case, then could these things possibly soak up texture and color of its surroundings and just kind of blend in a little easier? Their skin is complete. I mean, from what I've seen, the skin looks completely like battleship gray, which just blends into anything. If you have that gray skin and then hair that can literally, the way it's shaped, I mean, you think of like these cloaking mechanisms that the military develops. What if the hair can actually do that? Can it bend light like a prism and just bend light around it to whatever's behind it? You know, it shows that texture. I have no idea. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I always try to come up with like a scientific explanation for this stuff. You know, you can't half the time. I mean, then you start talking about these balls of light that are seen with these things, and then all of a sudden everything gets thrown down the tube. I'm like, all right, well, I have no explanation for that.
Right. Have you ever seen any orbs?
Not personally, no. I bring this up to my father all the time. I talk to him about this all the time. He's pretty open-minded to it. He's very intrigued by the photos and stuff. And he was telling me that he was driving through, I think it was Arizona back when he was a teenager, and through like a heavily forested area. And he said he had a ball of light follow his car. He was driving down the street. It was like really late, early in the morning kind of time, midnight, 1 a.m. kind of time. And he said a ball of light was traveling through the woods and came up to the passenger side window of his car and was keeping pace with him down the road. Ended up moving in front of the car and was still keeping pace with him, and then just darted off into the woods. And
Wow.
he saw it moving through the trees. Yeah. And my dad isn't the type of dude to even talk about any of this kind of stuff. He's very like, put together. He doesn't really, for him to tell me that was incredible in my opinion. I mean, just to hear him admit that to me, I was like, wow, that means something coming from him, because he's not the kind of guy to like want to even talk about that kind of stuff. He gets he's very reserved, I guess,
I've heard very similar stories about glowing balls of light behaving that way around vehicles.
Mm-hmm. He said it looked like it had intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably like the third time I've heard that.
So that's pretty interesting. I personally I go out, I mean, nowadays I'm out there at least twice a week, probably 8 hours each time. I go pretty deep into the wilderness all the time. I've still not seen one of these things,
Mm.
But yeah, that's another strange thing that, occurs with these things. And it's kind of hard to think of anything scientific, when it comes to the relationship of the balls of light and a Sasquatch. You could even scientifically describe like the glowing red eyes. I mean, I don't know where I just heard this, but someone was talking about this fish called a dragonfish. That's a deep sea fish. And the fish developed the ability to give out a red light through its eyes and see in infrared in the deep sea, where it's completely black. So I'm thinking, if a fish can develop something that puts out a red light so that it can see in infrared, who's to say that a land mammal that has to live mostly nocturnally because of human encroachment didn't over time develop the ability to see in infrared at night? Because you talk about you hear these stories about hunters, and hunters go out. I mean, they start walking out to their tree stands at what, 3 a.m. sometimes?
Oh, yeah, 3, 4 in the morning.
Yeah. You're going out there early. You want to get up. You want to get out there before the sun comes up. And these people are avid outdoorsmen. These people are all seeing the same thing, and they're describing it not as eye shine. We've all seen eye shine. They're describing these eyes to have a glow to them, like they're putting out their own light. Who's to say that these things can't see in infrared? There was a guy who was just talking about how he saw the eyes go from completely red to amber to yellow to a greenish tint and then almost to a light blue, all within a couple minutes. The same creature. I've taken pictures where I've seen these things. They have, it's fun. It's crazy. Like I'll take a whole bunch of pictures of the same spot. And if there's a creature in it, I've taken a couple where you see the complete eye, you see the pupil, you almost see like the actual color of the eye. It's almost like a beige color, where our color would be, surrounding the pupil. And then in another picture, it almost looks like, it's crazy to explain, but it almost looks like a film over the eye that changes the color completely into like this amber color. You know how certain animals have like a protective, like an under eyelid?
Yeah.
It almost looks like it has an under eyelid, like a protective layer or something. That's the only way I can explain how it looks. It's very interesting though. And I've noticed that a couple times with photos of these things.
I think if I remember correctly, and I'm sure if somebody's listening and knows, they'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think humans used to have like a secondary eyelid like that we evolved away from. It wouldn't surprise me at all if these things had, specialized eyes that have evolved into something, to help it survive. Nature will find a way,
Totally. And if you think about like how this creature must have changed over time, I mean, before humans were here, like how we are now, I mean, in this, the way we build cities now, and, there's, we just take over everything. And these things literally at one point of time, these things were able to come out during the day, when Native Americans were here, living here, before the white man came. These things, I mean, there's stories, there's Native stories where these things would, trade with natives, and they spoke the same, similar languages. They were able to communicate with each other and all this stuff. And, during that time, these things were probably able to come out during the day a lot more. And they didn't have to worry about hiding so much. Now, I mean, if you think about some of these areas where these things live, I mean, you think these things live in like the most remote areas of the world. They probably do. They do, but they also live right in urban areas too. I mean, there's that video of one going through a dumpster at like a Walmart or something. I mean, these things are living pretty close to people. They have to hide. They know how dangerous humans are. Over time, they must have adapted some sort of skills, biological skills, to help them, navigate at night. I don't know. I also have another theory. I don't know how valid this is or sounds, but I've been noticing I hear a lot of clicking, especially where I am in Southern California. And you wouldn't think that these things are in Southern California, but believe me when I tell you, these things are out here in Southern California in these mountains. I have a lot of experiences with these things out here. And I hear these teeth clicks all the time, like that. And I hear click, like that kind of finger popping sounds a lot. And I'm always wondering like what these sounds mean. And I'm always doing research and trying to figure out what anything could be. And a couple of weeks ago, I started doing some research, and I don't know how I got to this rabbit hole, but there was a guy who was blinded as a child. He couldn't see anything. And he literally, a human being, developed a way to echolocate using clicks.
Yeah, I've seen that guy.
And he's not the only one. He was the first one recorded to do this, but there's been more since then. So I'm thinking if humans lost their vision and can develop a sense of echolocation using clicks, then could these things use those clicks to echolocate at night? And if that's the case, they would know where, I mean, you know where everything is. I mean, they can, if you can echolocate and you could see infrared, I mean, come on. I mean, you're like, it would give them such insane abilities to just be able to navigate through those areas at night. I mean, and I cannot come up with another explanation of how they can move silently through a pitch black forest at nighttime, completely stealthy like that.
Yeah.
So that was just another theory I had. I don't know how valid that is or anything. I could just sound like a big idiot, but
No, not at all. It got me thinking about the tree knocks, actually. And maybe that's just like a big mapping
and the tree knocks, you're right.
do.
Yeah.
A lot of times the tree knocking seems to be associated with people, entering an area. So if they were using the tree knocks for some sort of, echolocation mapping to find out where the humans in the area were exactly or something.
And I get, out here in Southern California, I also hear lots of rock clacking. Lots of it. You just hear the rocks being very rapidly hit together really quickly in these pulses. That, I don't know if that has anything to do with it too, but I mean, they could be using those as well to navigate or just to see who's around, see what's around. Yeah, it's incredible. I was traveling to Northern California all the time and thinking I had to travel all the way up there until someone told me about this spot out here. A buddy at work, actually. We were just, talking about, the forest. I just love being in the forest. I feel very comfortable and at home in the forest. I love doing bushcraft. And, we were just talking about this. And I'm like telling him the worst part about living in Southern California is there's no forests. All the hikes out here are canyons and desert and, it's beautiful, but it's not, it doesn't give me that satisfaction. I just love being surrounded by trees. So then he told me, oh, well, there is a spot. It's in the Cleveland National Forest. It's less than an hour from, I live in San Diego. It's less than an hour from here. You could drive there in 52 minutes and you could be right in the middle of the forest. And the whole time, I've had lived out here for over a decade, had no idea it was there. And not only does he tell me about it, but he also has a best friend who owns a cabin out there. And she's never there. She lives in LA. And the cabin is basically just kind of like her. She goes there twice a year, maybe. And it just, it fits. And she lets him go up whenever he wants. So we started going up to that cabin a lot. And it was very, very, very secluded. I mean, my car couldn't even make it down the road to get to the cabin. The road is just a dirt cutout in the middle of the woods that goes for a few miles in. I mean, it is very hilly. I mean, you need a four-wheel. You need a Jeep or something to get back there. I have a Nissan Rogue. That thing cannot make it back there. I mean, it's pretty rugged back there. So yeah, we would go out to the cabin and, I'd bring throwing axes and we'd be out there in the back, throwing axes and knives and all kinds of stuff, just, hanging out and going on hikes during the day and this and that. Well, when we were going back to the cabin for the first time, we went the wrong way. He couldn't remember the road. There's like a few cutouts, and it's kind of hard to find. So we went down the wrong road. It eventually led to the cabin, But we're going down this road, and there's this sign back there that the Cleveland National Forest rangers put up. It was like this official Cleveland National Forest bulletin that was back there. And there was a sign on it that said, Bigfoot creatures have been seen out here. Please stay on marked trails at all times. And I thought, what the hell? Like, is this forest actually recognizing these things and just, warning people? It was cool to see. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's interesting.
I mean, I've seen people post them on the internet and stuff, but I've never heard of one actually in a forest.
Oh yeah, it was there, and it was official from them. Yeah, I was like, wow, I wonder if these things are out here. I found out that night that they are out there. We went out with we brought a few people from work. It was kind of like a boys' night out. We all got back there. Someone brought like a 9mm. We were going to go out into the Anza Borrego and shoot it the next day in some BLM land. So, like 5-6 of us. I'm a chef. So I made like a whole bunch of Jamaican food. I made like this big giant curry and all these Johnny cakes and all kinds of cool Jamaican food. It was so good. And we just kind of hung out back and ate a bunch of food, and we were drinking some beers, and we were saving the beer cans to shoot the next day. We were going to set them up in the desert and just, and shoot them. We were all chilling. At the end of the night, we all start going in and cleaning up outside, and I noticed one of the dudes was scraping his bowl of food into the bag with the cans. And I'm like, dude, we're going to shoot those cans tomorrow. Why are you freaking covering them in food? He's like, oh, shoot, sorry. Oh man. And I'm like, whatever. We'll just clean it up tomorrow. We'll just dig around them. So didn't think anything of it. The bag was left on the back porch. We all go in. The cabin has 2 bedrooms. You have to go through one bedroom to get to the second bedroom. That's kind of the layout. I took the far bedroom on the back wall of the cabin. My buddy, who scraped the food into the bag, took the second bedroom. And then the guy my buddy who, is best friends with the lady who owns the cabin, he likes to stay on the big giant couch out in the living room, and they have this big kind of faux fur thick carpet, and then one dude slept on the carpet. It was just like a whole bunch of us just kind of going to bed in there. And I would say around 3:30 in the morning, I got woken up by the exact same scream that I heard out in the Pine Barrens when I was a kid. That sounded like a woman being murdered outside. That actually was so loud that you could hear the glass in the windows shaking. It was loud. That woke me up. And I was sitting straight up, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And I'm just sitting there staring. There's the whole room, right where the bed is surrounded by windows. So I'm in this bed just surrounded by windows. And they have curtains down. And I'm sitting there staring, and I see movement, like something's walking, and then I start hearing footsteps outside the window. And then this window's 2 feet from my head. I'm just like, oh, great. Something's out there. And then I hear something step up onto the porch, and I hear that bag, and I hear the cans shaking, and I hear big, deep sniffs. And then I hear more cans shaking, and then the bag of cans drops. And then it just sounds like something full speed just sprinted off the porch. That kept me up for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
In the morning, I'm sitting there like, holy crap. I didn't even want to say anything in the morning. I was just like, I wonder if anyone else heard this. I'm not going to say anything about this. I'm going to wait. As soon as I come out in the morning, my buddy, the one who scraped the food into the bag, he's like, "Did you guys hear that last night? That scream?" He was the other one in the bedroom. He was freaked out by it. He's like, something came up. He explained exactly what I just explained. So both me and him were just sitting up like, what the hell? The other two dudes were in the living room. I don't really drink, so I was pretty sober. I drank like a beer maybe. So did my buddy, but the two guys in the living room were like partying it up. So they were so passed out, they didn't hear anything. I saw the look on my buddy's face, and yeah, he was terrified. He definitely heard something he had never heard before. He grew up out in like a forested area too, so he was like, I've never heard that sound in the woods before like that. And yeah, like I said, it sounded just like that scream. So I started going there twice a week ever since that first time in the cabin, and it's right along the Pacific Crest Trail. The Pacific Crest Trail, I believe, starts in Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. And it goes all the way up through southern, like San Diego County, southeast, up into the mountains. And right where that cabin is probably like a mile from where that Pacific Crest Trail, where you can get access to that trail. So I'm over there all the time. I go all different directions all the time. I have found very deep, large footprints. I've heard the rock clacking. I've gotten some incredible photos of these things all around me, grouped up into what I've been calling just pile-ups. I've noticed that they like to pile up on each other and cover each other's faces with their arms, and they huddle up into the darkest shadows of trees and rocks and get really low to the ground. And it's incredible. Some of these photos, you can see like 6, 7 of them just piled up. You can see little ones. I got a photo one time. My dad and my stepmother came out to visit, and they wanted to do a cool hike, and I brought them up there. My son came with us. We were all hiking, and I mean, we didn't even go deep off trail. We were pretty much sticking onto the trails. If we did go off trail, it was just, maybe like a couple 100 yards in the most. And then we'd come, make our way back the same way we came.
Yeah.
I don't, I had my son with me, so I don't want to really go deep off grid with him. But we're up there, and was it me or my son? One of us banged a stick against a tree really loud. I think it was probably me. I think I smacked a giant stick against a tree just for just messing around, really. And that was answered with a can't describe it. It wasn't very audible, but you can feel it. It sounded like this, like kind of noise, but it was more penetrating us. Like it was more like it felt like almost like a bomb went off somewhere, like nearby, or like something exploded nearby. Like that feeling of just boom, boom, just right through our bodies, and we all just stopped in our tracks. And my son's like, "What was that?" My dad's like, "Yeah, what was that?" And I'm like, "You know what? I don't know what that was, but I've never heard it up here. Maybe we should probably turn around and start heading out." It didn't feel normal. Didn't feel comfortable. And during that time, I started taking a bunch of pictures, and that's when I got one of the craziest pictures I've ever seen of this little infant that barely had any hair on him. He was all gray. On the shoulder of another one who looked very Neanderthal-like, very caveman-like. And he's on the shoulder of that one. And then right underneath them, peeking up, is another one, a very small one, probably about the size of my son, who was 5 at the time, just a few feet tall, peeking out. And then right to the left of them was the right side profile of a face that was, so detailed. You could see the eyes, the ear, you can see its hairline, you can see its kind of orangey brown hair going into black. You can see his hand covering his face, all his fingers, the wrinkles in the knuckle, the fingernails, you can see everything. There was a whole group of them right there, probably about 25, 30 yards from us. And I think that noise was a warning that we were getting too close, because there was a lot of young ones right there.
And you have all these?
Oh, yeah. I've got all these. I've got multiple albums in my phone, and each album has an incredible amount of photos of these creatures from that area. I have all albums from different areas, all labeled, time-stamped, everything. I keep it pretty organized.
You sent me several different photos, and there is definitely some in them that were very interesting, where you can clearly see, what looks like a Bigfoot. Do you have these photos posted on like your Instagram? You were talking about that earlier.
Of course, yeah. I post everything on there. I try to get feedback from other researchers. It's a great little outlet for me. I've made a lot of good friends from on there. It's great to bounce ideas back and forth with a lot of these other up and coming kind of researchers in different areas of the world. I've got friends out in Australia that are out in North Queensland that are finding the same stuff we're finding, tree structures and noises, and the same sort of photos of these blurry yowies or whatever.
Yeah,
it's incredible. But yeah, everything's posted.
There's just a lot of people, that's one of the main things I get feedback on is whenever somebody comes on the podcast and they talk about photos or videos, everybody starts asking where they can see them. And a lot of times some of the material that's discussed on the podcast isn't available publicly. So this is good. People can actually go and check out what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, please do. There's probably a damn near 400 something pictures of these things that I've posted. It's incredible. I've gotten so good at finding them, and I've gone through all these phases where now, it was just a week ago when I was sick, I was in bed, and I've gotten a lot more skilled at going through these pictures and finding these creatures than I was a few years ago. Like, the more you do it, the better you get. You know what to look for. You start learning these creatures' abilities, and you know how to, you come up with ways of trying to find them. Like, a lot of pictures, I'll see just a little hint of something where I think it might be a creature. And then you go in there and you zoom in and you adjust the exposure a little bit and you adjust the contrast a little bit. And all of a sudden these things start popping out, like detailed. I'm not talking like pareidolia. I'm talking detail, like eyeballs, nose, mouth, jawline, everything, hair, ears. You could see the perfect human ear, it's incredible. You get a lot of people that don't really understand the abilities these creatures have. They try to tell you everything's pareidolia, everything's a tree, everything's a rock. But once you really understand how these creatures are and how they're able to camouflage, you start learning these different tricks and stuff. And yeah, I have people sending me pictures all the time. They're like, "Do you see anything in this?" And yeah, I will scrub the picture. I'll go through it and do all the tricks I have. And a lot of times I find them and send these people back these photos of these creatures that were right next to them. They had no idea. So now it's been becoming a thing. I'm getting sent loads of pictures all the time. Like, "Hey, can you go through this for me?" I have a buddy who's out in Oregon who I met just through my page, and he's on the coast of Oregon in this beautiful rainforest, and he's constantly taking. I mean, he's out there every day. His name's Backwoods Bigfoot on Instagram. If anyone wants to check his stuff out. And yeah, he'll send me some videos, or he'll even just post, stories. And I'll take screenshots of some of his videos. And some of the creatures that I have found in some of his pictures are absolutely incredible. Incredible. I mean, I just found one about 2 weeks ago in one of his pictures that was the full side of a large Sasquatch. You could see his arm, his biceps. I mean, his hand is grasping something. I don't know what it's grasping, but you can see his thumb and you can see his knuckles and where his hair meets the wrist and kind of turns into like that grayish skin. His face, it looks like King Kong, this thing.
Wow.
The arm is about as wide as I am, round. I'm a big dude. I'm 6'3". I weigh 250. This thing is as big as my torso, wow, where his bicep is. I mean, the power, the hands are so huge. The fingers are so thick. I mean, the fingers look about as thick as my son's freaking arm, like a 6-year-old kid's arm. I mean, these things are huge, and they are able to hide. I mean, this photo I have that he took, if you look at the photo, the whole photo before you zoom in, it looks just like a beautiful rainforest. You just see trees and you see the ferns and the plants. And then I start zooming in for people and pointing things out, and they're like, "Holy crap." I mean, talk about hiding literally in plain sight. I mean, the way these things can use that ability to, I hate the word cloaking. I don't like using that word cloaking, but there's really no other word that is used for this ability yet, But the way they're able to soak up the background noise is incredible. And they just disappear. You could just barely see the outline. It's almost like the Predator,
Yeah.
The movie The Predator. They just completely just tone out. And they are right there, right in front of you. It's amazing. I've got a couple pictures from Northern California where I have one huge one. I mean, this thing must have been, I'm talking 12 feet tall. The hands on this thing are the size of my head, the fists. Also, the arms, like I said, some of these arms are almost, they've got to be almost 40 inches around. That's how big these things are. I mean, it's incredible, the size. And then you think about how silent they are and how it's just mind-blowing,
One last time, what's the name of your Instagram channel?
It's called Sasquatch _reanimated. I have all the photos up there, and I tell people, hey, if you had an encounter, hit me up and I will, for free, illustrate your encounter in my style and post it, and I'll post the story. I've done it a few times now. It's kind of just starting to pick up more. But yeah, people, it's hard to get people to come forward with their stories.
I mean, I'll do it, man. I want, I'm down to work with you and see your illustration version. That would be great.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to. I love doing it. And, I have a lot of people that are like, why aren't you charging for this? And I'm not really trying to be one of those people that's going to like capitalize off other people's encounters. I want it to be genuine, and I draw anyway. I'm constantly drawing. So it's like, okay, come on, give me some cool ideas. I'm basically doing it just for the cool idea and a cool experience. And, it's fun to bring someone's encounter to life for them that they can keep forever. And, I also have like an online store, which I will usually post those pieces of art, and, other people can buy shirts of it and hats and all kinds of cool stuff if they want. And, yeah, and I usually just, I'll send whoever gave me the encounter, I will send them a print of the art in the mail. Yeah, it's been pretty fun doing that. It just kind of brings the community together, and, that's what we need more of. I feel like we need more of just like a open-mindedness, and everyone's got to just, hear each other out a little more, because I feel like there's a lot of big egos in this field, and there's a little bit too much negativity sometimes. And I'm just trying to be a positive outlet where someone can open up and not have to worry about feeling like, they're going to get judged or anything. I've heard some crazy stories. I mean, I heard a story where this army guy was telling me that his friend traveled through an orb to another world after getting poked with tree fall through his stomach. And, some of these stories are incredibly bizarre and out there, but you really can't, with this subject, you cannot discredit people. You have to hear everyone out,
And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give people the opportunity to do that, man. And your story is one of the best ones I've ever heard, hands down. I mean, the stuff that you went through as a teenager was absolutely terrifying, and there's a lot of behavioral characteristics that you mentioned that, are kind of talked about around campfires amongst researchers. The hyena laughing, for instance. Mm-hmm. The spider crawling, all those things, man. So I really do appreciate you reaching out to me and setting this up and coming on here and sharing.
Yeah, it was a blast.
And if you'd like to share your story about a Bigfoot encounter or a run-in with something else you can explain, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to past episodes, merchandise, social media, everything you need, all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.